Hello, I'm Chris Moon. I am one of the luckiest people you're likely to meet to be alive, and I was asked to share my experiences 20 years ago because the experts told me I lived through a whole load of things that should definitely have killed me. So from that, I've worked out we should be very careful who we listen to, and we should be very careful about what we put into our heads, and we need to keep our heads in the right place. By the age of 21, I'd achieved my life's ambition. I'd worked my way into a farming partnership. My partner had a great philosophy and said because we milked the cows twice a day, we could never be sick or injured, and we needed to look after our physical and mental health and avoid isolation because it creeps up gradually and puts us in a dark place. Unfortunately, there was just one piece of the jigsaw he missed, and that was looking after his long-term health. And by the time he was in his mid-50s, he'd worn out his knees and hips. So here's a question for us all. What can we do to look after our long-term mental and physical health? Out of every disappointment I've experienced, I've always found a greater opportunity, and it will be that way if we choose to look at it and not give up. I became an army officer, served 3 years on anti-terrorist operations, stopping people being blown up. I wanted to continue this, so I left to work for a charity, clearing landmines in war zones all over the world. I survived being taken prisoner by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. That taught me something about isolation. 2 years later, I was blown up in Mozambique, losing my lower right arm and leg. The surgeon said he'd never seen anybody live with such a small amount of blood. I made the fastest recovery my doctors said they'd ever seen, and did the London Marathon within a year of leaving hospital. I thought I was doing really well until the 11-mile point, when a massively large gentleman waddled past me in a chicken suit. That moment taught me that at the end of the day, we are all a bit ridiculous and we have to be able to laugh at ourselves. Humour is one of our greatest coping mechanisms. I'm told I became the world's first amputee ultra-distance runner, that's distances of 100 miles and upwards, when I did the Marathon des Sables in 1997. Subsequently, I've done many of the world's toughest ultra-marathons. Isolation can be a good thing. For example, Forestry Commission research shows that when people walk through woodland on their own, it has the effect of recharging their psychological batteries and relaxing them. But mankind is a gregarious species. We are meant to interact. And studies show that at any age, if we do become isolated, then cognitive decline can begin immediately. Here are a few thoughts on isolation. To test artificial legs, I did a 300-mile run and walk from Badwater in Death Valley to the top of Mount Whitney and back. It was continual movement for nearly 6 days. I was alone most of the time. During the daylight, it never felt lonely. I loved the isolation, the vast views, and the chance to reflect and think. With no lights anywhere, the sky at night was amazing. When the weather changed, it became cloudy. There was a roaring hot wind blasting your face and filling your ears with a sound like a speeding lorry passing several feet away. The wind picked up sand, so you had to put your head down. After several hours, I was in a really bad place. I felt totally isolated. I couldn't see the point of anything. Minor errors made by the crew in the previous days now assumed epic and catastrophic proportions, and I started to hate them. As I approached the vehicle to get water, I saw it was affecting them as well. 2 of them were shouting and shoving each other not far off an all-out fight. I realised the isolation was getting to us. You had to shout to be heard over the wind, so it sounded angry and stressful and quickly led to confrontation. I got all of the crew in the shelter of the vehicle and told them how isolated I felt because of the dark, the sound and the sand. They agreed, no talking outside the vehicle. And every 2 miles I would stop in the shelter of the vehicle for a few seconds and check in with one of the crew. I cannot explain how good it was to have a thumbs up and a pat on the back every 2 miles. It was as if I was released from the prison of my own mind. Eventually dawn came, The wind died down and I felt like I'd been let out of a cage. The anti-isolation plan worked. We should all get one. There was an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Welshman who went into a pub. Those were the days. But before long, they will be back again. But in the meantime, the great thing is to keep on keeping on. Don't be a stranger. Who can you reach out to? Good luck with that.